Welcome, everyone, to episode number 3 of Decipher Wars Radio. This is a web radio program all about our upcoming game, the Mumon Rift Wars TCG. I am your host, Mark Tuttle. This is our 3rd episode, and we've got a great show for you this week, folks. We are going to give you the much-delayed interview with Warren Holland. We talk a little bit about the beginnings of the Mumon Rift Wars TCG project. Also, we'll take a check in the art department, find out what's going on down there these days. Some email to read for you, and we're going to give you the big reveal this week, which is your first chance to get a sneak peek at the play. Conceptual stuff. John also going to write down that URL for you in just a couple of moments. First, though, he was supposed to be here 2 weeks ago. We finally have him in the studio. It's Warren Holland. Warren, welcome to Decipher Wars Radio.
Thank you, Mark.
Let's talk now about... See, you got all the answers.
A few.
You have the information on everything about this project. The backstory, everybody knows. For 6 years, we released sets for the Star Wars CCG.
Correct.
A lot of people say it is the best game mechanics in the industry.
Yep.
You can tell that because of the loyalty of the fans. And people who are not necessarily fans of the Star Wars property, but of the mechanics.
I personally got thousands and thousands of emails from people that wanted us to bring back the Star Wars mechanics.
Right. And they weren't asking for the property. They wanted the mechanics.
Correct.
Why was now the time to bring back the Star Wars CCG mechanics?
Well, actually, this is a culmination of something that's been going on probably for a decade at Decipher. We have been considering doing a proprietary product for a very, very long time. And one of the interesting things about the Star Wars CCG mechanic was its power, and the player base was enormously passionate about the mechanic. There's a hole in the marketplace now. You know, we do a lot of licensed stuff, as you know, but we've been looking for that really strong proprietary opportunity for us, and this is the time. This is the opportunity for us to be able to marry the great gameplay base that we had with something that was really a fantastic opportunity to create a new and dynamic science fiction property.
When did this idea just hit you to decide, okay, it's time, we're going to make up our own universe?
We've been batting this around probably for a year or so, and seriously for about a year or so, and then, you know, at one of the conventions, Tim Ellington and I were sitting around, and Scott Gata and I were sitting around at a table, and I said, okay, now's the time, we're going to do it.
And their reply was?
And their reply, and the jaw dropped. And,
well, like most people here at Decipher.
And they were very excited about it too, you know, so we had both reactions.
Sure. Well, when Warren says it's time to do something, we all say, okay, sure, we'll do it.
No, you don't.
Now, well, not in front of you, we should point
right.
out. When you started this process, was there something that this project must be, and then conversely, something that this project mustn't be?
Yeah, actually, a very interesting question. I think both of those are true. There is a responsibility to take a gameplay mechanic like what we had developed with Star Wars and create a property around that was very appropriate to that mechanic. A sci-fi universe was almost dictated by that. Movement in space was almost dictated by that, things like that. There were other things that we simply did not want to bring into the property, and those would be things that would compromise our ability to be able to do game mechanics with a storyline that actually worked very well in conjunction, that the dance between those two, you know, turned into a ballet. And what we've done, and what we're in the process of doing, and what everybody's working until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning doing now, is that dance, is that merger between creating a universe that's never existed before. And it's a very dynamic process, because if we had just started a project to kind of go out and develop a movie on our own, or a TV series on our own, we wouldn't have the constraints of the game mechanic elements that we have to bring into the property. And what this does is actually, what the game mechanics do is provide a base that's actually a really strong thing to work from. And what I find that we're creating then is stronger science fiction, because we're doing it from a factions perspective and a game perspective than if we just had a totally open page and we're going in any direction.
Tell us about this universe that Decipher is creating.
It's 400 years in the future. Some of the listeners probably know a little bit about the story. It's basically 400 years in the future. It's in our solar system. There is this very dramatic event that happens in the solar system when this rift opens up and a planet comes through and a couple of alien races come through, into what is really already a universe that's a solar system that's at war. So there's huge amounts of opportunity for drama here. And then there's other elements of what happens when the rift opens that creates literally hundreds or thousands of heroes by imparting certain powers onto them. And a part of what we wanted to do in this property, from your earlier question, was we wanted this property to have an enormous amount of soul, a backing in spirituality and a backing in science, the marriage between those two, where everything made sense, everything could really happen.
You'll notice through the interview that we haven't really mentioned the name. We haven't talked about the Mumon Rift Wars TCG. And the reason is, and I did that very deliberately, because everything we've talked about so far has been prior to the actual selection of the name of the property.
Correct.
I was sitting in on a meeting a couple of months ago, it seems like now, where we were kicking around name ideas, and we've got a huge whiteboard in our conference room upstairs, and we wrote out a bunch of things, and some of it got very deep, and some of it got very silly, as is apt to happen. And you walked in about 2 hours into that meeting and sat down and looked at some things and said, well, that's okay. I don't really like that one. That one's all right. And then the next day sent out an email of something that was completely out of left field.
Totally.
And it was the Mumon Rift Wars.
Right.
And we all kind of looked at it and went, what? And then you explained what that was. You didn't just make up a word.
Right.
As I hear some sci-fi authors are apt to do. This had some specific meaning. Tell us about that.
Well, what really happened was in this search to kind of have a central soul and spirituality to the property, I've done a lot of reading, personal reading, kind of on my own, of a lot of science background, Stephen Hawking kinds of stuff. A lot of my girlfriend is really into yoga, and I've done a lot of reading in that area. And Zen and Buddhism and those kinds of things are interests of mine, and a lot of reading in terms of things like Joseph Campbell, hero journeys, mythology, and backgrounds. And what I was really looking for was something that kind of brought not just a name to the property, but a sense of meaning behind it, as you just said. And there's a writing that's called The Gateless Gate, which is a Zen reference. But it's basically 48 stories, 48 koans that was written by a man by the name of Mumon. And in that reading, there was a lot of things that, as I was kind of flipping through that again, gave me references that felt very, very similar to exactly what we were trying to create in the universe of the Wars property and the story of the property. It just clicked for me that we wanted to do this. And I knew this name would kind of be out there on the edge and not really kind of one of the things that people would expect. But over time, I think what's going to happen is that the purpose of this and the underlying structure of the names are going to have an enormous benefit to customers. It's not just in the property name. It's in the names of ships. It's in the names of planets. It's in the names of characters. It's in the names of kind of powers and events and things that happen to them, all just having underlying meaning. And I think that provides a more dramatic story.
Speaking of the story, what do you think, what will make the Mumon Rift as a property stand out from other sci-fi properties?
I think there's a Mumon quote that I'm kind of using in the beginning of our style guide now, and it says, "This is a matter of life and death." The story that we're creating actually has that dynamic. It has great heroes. It has great villains. It has the potential for us to literally create thousands of heroes, all with different kinds of powers. As a property develops, what you really want to be able to do is not just tell an interesting sci-fi story, but also tell it in a context that people care about the characters. If you walk out of a movie and the story was okay, but you didn't really care about the characters, then you're not going to recommend that film to anybody. And the same thing here. If you kind of play the game and you get a sense that what Decipher has created is a very strong story behind the gameplay that everybody really loves already, then we're going to have an enormously successful property.
Now, you've talked a lot about the spirituality aspect of the background behind the Mumon Rift and things like that, but a lot of research has been done here at Decipher and by the guys that are providing some of the backstory about the science content of it. How important is science fact in the Mumon Rift?
Actually, it's very important. We want to have a underlying fundamental universe that operates on principles that are based on science. And this particular story has a lot of that in terms of quantum mechanics and string theory, and string theory is kind of coming in and out of favor now, but we have done a lot of background research in terms of how to create events, this kind of dramatic opening of a rift in our galaxy that is based in science realities. And then, of course, we extend those realities in terms of creating powers and dynamics of the story that impart themselves to the characters. But the background science is very strong, and we have not had an opportunity to do this yet, but one of the plans that we have to do is that we're going to end up hiring some consultants that are university-type consultants to kind of examine all the background stuff that we've created so far and make sure that we're kind of fitting in the line of everything that we would know as of today in terms of science, in terms of quantum mechanics.
Now, a couple of weeks ago, we had several members of the media in here for a media weekend, and we did have an individual who has a little bit of background in
yes, we did,
in quantum
and
physics.
He was very excited about it too.
He read what you wrote, and he gave us the thumbs up.
Yeah,
he said
very exciting.
We were apparently onto something there. Now, something that you somewhat alluded to, one of the questions that I have seen frequently is about the powers in the game, which
yes.
of course. The spiritual aspect of Star Wars was, a game mechanic, the whole use of the Force and the Jedi and things like that.
Right.
And this whole quantum foam does play a part of that in the Mumon Rift.
Well, and the truth is all of us are really energy beings, in our own way. And when you start getting into quantum mechanics in terms of what energy means and what it, how it impacts the universe and how it impacts even our thought processes and mental processes. It's very, very interesting. I mean, you can't create anything in science fiction that is more dramatic than what is actually happening in terms of science and in terms of the nature of science and the discovery of that. It's fascinating stuff. I mean, two particles can exist in different places at the same time. Science fact, but it's fascinating to be exploring those edges of how can that really happen when we walk around day to day to day looking at our desk and our telephone and thinking, particles in two places at once, how does that really happen? But we're building elements of all of that into our story in a way that gives it credibility, and then we're building on top of that these very dramatic elements of energy and war and conflict that give the story its power.
And that is part one of our interview with Decipher Chairman and CEO Warren Holland. Warren, thank you very much. We'll have the second part of that interview as we get more into how the universe was created, what the actual 5 factions represent, and all that stuff coming up for you on Decipher Wars Radio next week. All right, some news of the week to pass along to you. These are some of the things that are happening here at Decipher as we get closer to that October 6th release date for the Mumon Rift Wars TCG. I walked down to the art department 2 days ago, and they literally have everything papered. The walls are just papered with numbered sheets of paper. There's a small conference room as you walk into our art department. Not a large room, and literally there are 330-some sheets of paper hanging on the wall, some with numbers, a lot with pictures, and it only took me a couple seconds to realize what they're doing is they're actually starting to build the premiere set for Wars TCG. It was so cool to be standing down there, folks. I got a chance to kind of peek at some of the pictures that they haven't shown us around the building yet. So things are really starting to come together nicely. And I got to say that the outside artists that we're contracting are submitting some fantastic pieces. You are going to be so blown away by the art you see in the Mumon Rift Wars TCG. So that's going on down in art. They're working hard down there, Ed and the folks. Also, the playtesters are coming back to Decipher. On July 16th and 17th, we're holding our in-house playtest. Now, this is something we've traditionally done for all of our games. We pick a small group of people out of our satellite playtesters. We fly them into Norfolk, and we have an in-house playtest. Now, I participated in these myself, going all the way back to Star Wars CCG Premiere, when we used to do this at the Omni down on the waterside here in Norfolk. It's a lot of fun, but let me tell you, folks, playtesting is very, very hard. It's a grueling weekend. You wouldn't think that just playing cards all weekend long would be tough, but it is. It's really a difficult task. So the folks that they're bringing in for this playtest have their work cut out for them, but should be a lot of fun. We will have reports from that coming up in 2 weeks here on Decipher Wars Radio, so we'll interview some of the guys and see what they think about the Wars TCG mechanics. Also, we announced this week that the first demos for Wars TCG will take place at DecipherCon 2004, which is going to happen at Gen Con Indy, August 19th through the 22nd. So stop by the Decipher booth. You will have your chance to test drive the game system yourself. Plus, also check out the details on Decipher.com about the DecipherCon 2004 convention kit. Your chance to pick up the 2004 DecipherCon t-shirt, which is Wars TCG themed. So very cool stuff. Running long, let's check some email.
We get email. We get your email every day.
Okay.
Here's your mail today.
All right, here we go. This first one is from Jonathan Rutter from Granite City, Illinois. He says, in the month prior to the release of Wars TCG, will there be promotional materials available, particularly demo decks, that can be purchased by tournament directors or retailers? Well, good question. I like this question because he's thinking about his retailer. We're actually planning a retail kit that will go out to our platinum retailers at the end of August, which will contain a bunch of sales and marketing materials for Wars TCG. And demo decks won't be part of that kit, but we are planning on doing demo decks a little bit later after that, just to give the retailer some stuff to help promote Wars TCG. So good question there, Jonathan. My email of the week asks some really good questions. This is from Jeff. And it doesn't say, it's Jeff Sacamano. I hope I pronounced that right. Jeff doesn't say where he's from, but he asks some good questions. Here we go. Number one, with 5 competing factions to choose from, how many factions will be feasible to include in a competitive deck? The way they're kind of structuring this right now is that you're going to want to play 2 factions in a deck. Say you're going to have Earth and you're going to have Quay, perhaps. Or you're going to have maybe the Ganjan and the Shi will team up. That's the kind of thing you're looking for, rather than just have a single faction deck. We want it to have a little more flavor to it. We want it to be a little more unique. So, which leads right into this. Will the factions always be in conflict with each other, or will there be some benefit to having an alliance of 2 or more factions in your deck? Well, the answer to that is, yeah, there will be a benefit because, again, you'll be able to pull the relative strengths from each faction. The way that the Mumon Rift Wars storyline is set up is everybody has their own agendas, everybody has their own ideas how things should be, everybody's protecting their own piece of turf. So you're going to have situations where, for example, the maybe Earth and Ganjan might join together to fight the common enemy of the Shi. Or perhaps the Quay might come to Earth and say, hey, we need help knocking off the Shi that's trying to knock you guys off. So, yeah, there'll definitely be a lot of that cooperation going on in your Wars TCG deck. Next question that Jeff asks, with 4 potential pre-constructed starter decks available at release, which faction gets the shaft and doesn't have their own starter? The answer to that is none. The faction starter decks will have 2 factions in each, so everybody's going to get their representation in the starter decks. Last question. Hollywood is increasingly supporting major films with direct-to-DVD animated features. Do you foresee this kind of media as an avenue to increase awareness of the Wars TCG brand? You never know. We've been saying this week after week. You just never know where we could go with this. We would hope it would come to something like that, certainly, but I think right now we're just more concerned about getting a great game onto the market. All right, folks, that's it for email this week. Jeff Sacamano was our email of the week. We'll set him up with some great prizes. Now, the big reveal for this week. Here you go, folks. Write this down. This is a kind of hidden little place on our website where we're going to show you our first piece of conceptual art from the Mumon Rift Wars TCG. Write this down. warstcg.com/articles/ID equals 340. You'd think they would make that easier for me, but they're not going to. All right, again, warstcg.com/articles with a capital A /article with a capital A .aspx capital I, capital D, equals 340. You'll see one of the first conceptual pieces we got from John Howe, who, of course, did the conceptual artwork for the Lord of the Rings films. That is what the Quay is going to look like, folks. And trust me, they've only gotten cooler since that first piece of conceptual art came into us. All right, there you go. That's Wars Radio for this week, folks. Enjoy that. Oh, and please don't post the URL for that. We want people to listen to Wars Radio to get it for themselves. So if you're on the message boards, no. Make people go get it themselves. All right, next week's part 2 of the interview with Warren Holland, also a playtest report. Big reveal, we're going to have some art from the Ganjan faction. Cool stuff. Very, very nice. And we're also going to talk about Wars TCG in the media, where you're going to see some very special and very cool Wars TCG coverage this summer. That's coming up next week on Decipher Wars Radio. Have a great one, folks. We'll see you then.
Signal verification is complete.